Hello, listeners, from Roy Demare bin Sam, speaking to you actually from Izhevsk, which is the capital of the Udmurt Republic, about 1,200 kilometers to the east of Moscow, where I am with Mark Charles, the choir master, organist, and director of music of the Holy Trinity Anglican Church, and he has been teaching English sacred music to a professional choir here in Izhevsk, and also to a group of music teachers. Mark is an extraordinary musician, very highly qualified, and he can bring even the most highly professional singers a great deal. All that makes the general election results in the United Kingdom seem a little way off, yet I have been deliberately waiting until the results become clear before making this broadcast. It happens that James Comey, the sacked leader of the FBI, has given his report to Congress. And I think these two events, the UK election results and the James Comey testimony, are both quite earth-shaking and could very likely lead to the change of leadership in both the United States and the United Kingdom. But first, let me comment on this UK election result. You will remember David Cameron. He called a referendum that he fully expected to win about the UK and its relationship to the European Union. He called it not really for the sake of the United Kingdom as a whole, but for the sake of the Conservative Party. And the result was that he lost the referendum in terms of what he wanted it to do, and he had to resign along with his whole government. Thereupon, Theresa May came to power rather unexpectedly and has led the Conservative Party ever since with a small but working majority. She then argued that she needed a bigger majority and thought she should get it because she's got such a hopeless opposition in the form of the Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn. But again, like Cameron, she made a great mistake. And one has to conclude, or observe at least, that it looks as though that when the UK electorate is clearly presented with opportunism not for the country as a whole, but as a means to increase the power of the incumbent party of government, then the electorate is likely to say, hey, we don't agree, stop this power grab. Theresa May held the election ostensibly to create greater stability, meaning that she could keep at bay her very right-wing members of the party, and she has not delivered stability, she has delivered the opposite. And I have to say it is likely, therefore, that she will have to resign and that the Conservative Party itself will rebel against her. The actual Parliament results will be what they call a hung Parliament. The Conservatives are the largest party without that overall majority, and when you look at the other parties, it is unlikely that they could come to terms with any of them, and even if they did come to terms with the Liberal Democrats, I'm not sure they would then have a majority, but the Lib Dems came out so badly this time, and after the last coalition with the Tories, that is not a route the Lib Dems would want to take, and everybody else is in fact in favour of soft Brexit or no Brexit at all, and so I can't see a coalition. So the UK will limp on with a minority government, and that will be an interesting experience, one which I've not seen in my lifetime. I've seen a coalition, but I've never seen a minority government. I think May will resign. It might not be immediate, but I can't see that she has got anything like the authority to continue as Prime Minister, and and as Prime Minister with a policy of what she's called a hard Brexit, meaning that links with the European Union will be minimised. I think now we have a situation where a soft Brexit is much more likely, with maintenance of the single market, acceptance of the freedom of movement into the UK of European citizens, customs union, and all the things that are well worth saving from membership of the European Union. So I end up being a little bit hopeful that the hard-nosed approach, we can go it alone, has been put behind us. I really hope so. I'm a great believer in the United Kingdom and very much want Scotland to remain part of it. I'm very fond of Scotland, or I've become fond of Scotland since I've been going there, and it is just great to see the SNP lose some of its power and therefore the likelihood of a new referendum to quit the United Kingdom. The leader of the Tory party has done so well in Scotland. The Scottish leader of the Tory party, I had not really heard before, her name is Ruth Davidson. They've made a significant comeback. So has Labour, by the way, in the North East. And this Ruth Davidson is actually being looked at as a possible replacement for Theresa May. And that would be really quite something, that if May resigns, which I would foresee, then they might turn to this rather successful Conservative politician from Scotland. If she does make it to UK Premiership, remember that you will have heard it first from me on Radio 74, but if I'm quite wrong, just forget it. Let's take a look now at the James Comey story in the United States. It would have been all over the headlines in the BBC and elsewhere had it not been for the UK election, but it really is an extraordinary result. Of course, Trump and his legal advisor have promptly denied everything that James Comey has said, but if you listen, as I did actually, to the introduction that Comey gave to his testimony, you can but think this is a highly professional, honest, straight-talking person who can not conceivably tell a lie, and who has taken copious notes of all those meetings with Donald Trump. And then you've got Trump just dismissing the whole thing and having his own personal lawyer coming in and say, it's all wrong, it's all wrong. Whom do you believe? I can't see that anybody who's got a little bit of non-bias about them can give credit to Trump's lawyer over James Comey. So it is a really big event when James Comey says or implies that Trump has been intervening in due process. I've been saying on this program for some weeks now that I do expect the Republican Party eventually to say, along with the rest of the United States, that enough is enough, that we want a truthful, non-demagogue, normal president. The United States deserves one. Rather like with Brexit, I think in the UK, it's a case of a small majority voted a certain way. In fact, it wasn't even a small majority in the United States because the popular vote was in favour of Clinton. And that this small majority or large minority is beginning to have second thoughts. In the case of the UK, it's second thoughts over the Brexit, whether it should be at all and whether it should be hard or soft. In the case of the United States, it's whether or not the country has a president who is really up to the challenges of that very important position. Now, the main purpose of my broadcast is to talk to you about investments and the economy and how it leads us to investments. And I've also been saying for many weeks now that the stock market is extremely high And so the least you can say is that to go into it at this point is very dangerous, because when you are that high, the main place to go is down. That downward movement has been forecast by several people, including me, on a number of reasons. One is the issue of aging. Another is the issue of spare capacity. Yet another is that the whole direction of Trump's economic policy, if it can be called a policy, is towards trying to go backwards into coal mining and manufacture, when in fact the way forward is via added value in services and electronics, and in recognizing the massive change that is taking place in retailing. If an administration does not even grasp what the main issues are in economic trends today, it would be rather surprising that they could come up with policies which address or live with or move with those trends. So I think people will be understanding that fairly soon. When I say fairly soon, I mean this year, although things are always a bit slower than I think they're going to be, because I find things are obvious, but obviously other people don't find them so obvious. And then if the economy starts stalling, then we'll get this drop in the stock market, which Harry Dent and many other people are forecasting. The Fed seems to have delayed again its rise in interest rates. If they did have a rise in interest rates, that might give a small boost in the first instance, because it will persuade people, oh yeah, the economy is doing well again, so the Fed has raised interest rates. But in fact, of course, those higher interest rates will make it more expensive for companies to borrow, and so it will put another, not nail in the coffin, but it will slow down the economic growth, which may or may not be actually returning. The economy is just kind of stumbling forward, and it's a long way from being solidly based. Stability, so much spoken about on both sides of the Atlantic, and with politicians, again, on both sides of the Atlantic, giving us anything but the stability they promise. Stay safe, protect your investments, don't take any big risks now. This is not the point in history where taking big risks is worth it for the ordinary person. There'll be one or two who do take big risks who come off well. I'm thinking of George Soros many years ago, but that's not the route for most of us. Speak to you again next week.